Welcome to the session. My name is Nicole Vitale, and I am the Executive Director of Early Childhood and Literacy for the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. CMSD is a longtime member of the Council of Great City Schools, and we have been working closely together over the last few years to engage in early literacy initiatives with other large urban districts. I am looking forward to this conference and the great sessions. I will be moderating a Q&A session after the presentation, and I will take questions, so please be sure to add your questions to the chat during the presentation. I have the great pleasure of introducing Dr. Pat Edwards to you today. Dr. Edwards is a member of the Reading Hall of Fame and a professor of teacher education at Michigan State University. She was the first African American president of the Literacy Research Association and also served as the president of the International Literacy Association. Dr. Edwards developed two nationally acclaimed family literacy programs, Parents as Partners in Reading and Talking Your Way to Literacy. Her research focuses on issues related to families and children, and she has written several books on this topic. Dr. Edwards is a member of the Michigan Department of Education's Family Engagement Stakeholders Task Force. She is the recipient of the Literacy Research Association's 2012 Albert J. Kingston Service Award, the 2014 International Literacy Association Jerry Johns Outstanding Teacher Educator in Reading Award, and the 2015 Michigan Reading Association's Outstanding Teacher Educator Award. Dr. Edwards was named as the 2017-2018 Jeannie S. Chall Visiting Researcher at Harvard Graduate School of Education. In 2019, she received the AERA Scholars of Color Distinguished Career Contribution Award at the senior level. She was recently appointed by Governor Whitmer to the 2020-2024 Michigan Pre-K-12 Literacy Commission. She was also awarded the 2020 Oscar S. Causey Award from the Literacy Association for her outstanding contributions to reading research. She is the first African American in the history of the organization to receive this award. Dr. Edwards will be presenting her session entitled, "So You Want to Involve Parents? Some New Ways to Engage Them." This session has already been recorded, and I will join live for the Q&A at the conclusion of the presentation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Pat Edwards.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to share some new ways to engage parents. Also, I want to share some of the changing definitions of family literacy. I provided a handout which includes the changing definitions of family literacy, as well as a handout of family literacy resources. I divided the family literacy resources into two categories: family literacy foundational texts and family literacy texts, home and school influences. Denny Taylor in 1983 coined the phrase family literacy to describe the ways in which reading and writing were embedded into the daily lives of middle-class families with whom she worked. The roots of family literacy as an educational method come from the belief that the parent is the child's first teacher. Family literacy is a method of education, relatively new. Family literacy is being put into practice in the United States, Canada, and South Africa. Family literacy means different things to different people. Family literacy refers to the interactions of parents and children using language, talking, playing, exploring, limiting, soothing, explaining, encouraging, nurturing. A second use of the term family literacy applies to the federally funded programs developed to support intergenerational education for at-risk, low literacy families, programs such as Head Start, Even Start, Title I. And family literacy entails four components, according to the legislation: adult basic education, early childhood education, parent and child together time. Also, there is the National Literacy Act of 1991, Even Start Family Literacy, and H.R. 1385 passed by the House in 1997. And also, the International Reading Association has a definition of family literacy. According to them, family literacy encompasses the ways parents, children, and extended family members use literacy at home and in the community. I had the opportunity to meet First Lady Barbara Bush. And as many of you know, First Lady Barbara Bush has had as one of her focuses focusing on family literacy. And I said to her that I was extremely happy that former First Lady Nancy Reagan had said no to drugs, but I was extremely happy she was saying yes to literacy, and that if we were going to have a kinder and gentler nation, we needed people who could read, write, and compute. First Lady Barbara Bush said, I strongly believe if every man, woman, and child could read, write, and comprehend, we would be much closer to solving many of our nation's serious problems. I have spent my entire career focusing on school, family, and community partnerships. As you saw earlier, I've written several books on the topic, and many of my books have been bestsellers. For example, my book, New Ways to Engage Parents, received the 2017 Delta Kappa Gamma Educators Award. For this book, I've developed a study guide, and it is one of your handouts. I coined two phrases, differentiated parenting and parentally appropriate. I proposed the concept of differentiated parenting as a way to urge schools not to place all parents in one basket. I used the term parentally appropriate to stress the point that because parents are different, tasks and activities must be compatible with their capabilities. Activity 1, evaluating parent involvement. What is your school's history of involving parents and families? What is your school's philosophy regarding parents' involvement in school activities? And what training and skills do you need for involving parents in your school affairs? This is really interesting. I worked at a professional development school for about 4 years. And it was interesting because when I got there, the teachers were still thinking of the parents the way that school was built in 1952. And the teachers were still thinking of parent involvement the way it was in 1952. Well, in 1952, it was a first-time homeowner school. When I went there, it was a very diverse population, and it was not the same. So they were trying to serve a population of parents that didn't exist. So it's important to look at your school's history. The second activity is to look at the parent involvement climate. What are the present conditions? What are your goals, bridges, barriers, first steps? And lastly, come to some consensus around parent involvement. What is your definition, the school's definition, and how does your definition as a teacher conflict with the school's definition? That's extremely important, is to be on the same page regarding your definition of parent involvement. Parent stories. I have come up with 4 different directions for working with families. First, parent stories, demographic profile, scope and sequence of parent involvement, and scenarios for problem solving with parents. Collecting parent stories. I came up with this idea because, for one thing, doctors collect family histories, lawyers collect depositions, architects collect a lot of information about our lifestyles, but teachers sometimes don't collect parent stories. And parent stories are a way for teachers to collect the literacy histories of their children that they're working with. Literacy begins at home, not at school. This is a very powerful quote by Kathy Owl. Instruction should build on the foundation for literacy learning established in the home. Students' time in and out of school. Looking at this graph, 24% of the time children spend in school, but 76% of the time they spend outside of school. So it's important that we understand what's happening outside of school and how that impacts what's happening inside of school. Cultures in the classroom. This is very interesting. What teachers and students bring with them. Number two, it's the classroom culture, what's already there. And number three, classroom cultures, the work that people do together. To me, this is extremely important as to why parent stories are important, because we need to have some sense of what's happening where we can bring the literacies of the children and the teacher together. I wrote a book entitled A Path to Follow, Learning to Listen to Parents. And in this particular book, it was designed as a way to show teachers how to collect parent stories. Alfred Tatum says it's not just about students' literacies, it's about their lives. Victoria Purcell Gates says, when we seek to understand learners, we must seek to understand the cultural context within which they have developed. Learn to interpret who they are in relations to others, and learn how to process, interpret, or decode their world. I really like this quote by First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. She says, we have to face the fact that either all of us are going to die together, or we're going to learn to live together. And if we are to live together, we have to talk. According to Taylor and Dorsey, if we are to teach, we must first examine our own assumptions about families and children. We must be alert to the negative images in the literature. Instead of responding to pathologies, we must recognize that what we see may actually be healthy adaptations to an uncertain and stressful world. As teachers, researchers, administrators, and policymakers, we need to think about the children themselves and try to imagine the contextual worlds of their day-to-day lives. Parent stories will help us do that. Why stories? According to Vandegrift and Green, every parent has his or her own story to tell. Robert Coles, in his book, The Call of Story, contends that one's response to a story is just as revealing as the story itself. And I agree with that, because if teachers don't know the story, they don't sometimes know how to respond to the story. In the past, teachers have asked one-dimensional questions like, how many hours per week do you routinely spend reading stories to a child? Have you set aside a certain time every day to read to your child? Do you encourage your child to read or tell you a story? You all get the picture. These are one-dimensional questions, and parents tend to give very positive answers. How can I use parent stories to support students' literacy development? Parent stories will give us routines of parents and children, parents' recollections of their children's early learning efforts, parents' perceptions as to whether their occupations determine how they raise their children, descriptions of parents' teachable moments, artifacts of children's literacy history, scrapbooks, audio tapes, videotapes, photographs. Parent stories can provide teachers with the opportunity to gain a deeper understanding of the human side of families and children, why children behave as they do, children's ways of learning and communicating, some of the problems teachers have encountered, and how these problems may have impacted their children's views about school and the schooling process. Parent stories will offer us a route out of the blame cycle. Sometimes when we don't know what's happening with a child, we make up our own answers to what we think might be happening. Collecting parent stories. In the book that I wrote, A Path to Follow Learning to Listen to Parents, there are 11 categories of questions, and there are 50 questions. I'm going to share with you a sample of some of the questions. Can you describe something about your home learning environment that you feel might be different from the learning environment of the school? That's a story. Can you describe something about your child's learning environment that you would like the school to build upon because you feel that this something would enhance your child's learning potential at school? Is there something about your child that might not be obvious to the teacher, but might positively or negatively affect his or her performance in school if the teacher knew? If so, what would be that something? According to P. David Pearson, he says children are who they are. They know what they know. They bring what they bring. Our job is not to wish that students knew more, knew differently. Our job is to turn each student's knowledge and diversity of knowledge we encounter into a curricular strength rather than an instructional inconvenience. So often, children become instructional inconveniences if we don't know their stories. Demographic profile. This is another way of getting to know families and children. It's a short questionnaire that compiles the information about the school's families. And there are two types of demographic profiles. There's one for the school and classroom level. Why demographic profiles of families important? They allows teachers to develop a tailor-made parentally appropriate activities. It helps teachers see the history of parent involvement at the school and classroom level. It allows educators to see whether parent involvement has been effective. It gives teachers a way to pinpoint where problems may be occurring, allows teachers to interact with families in a way that is specific to their needs, provides teachers with an in-depth look at the strengths of the family and community. It gives teachers real data and removes the guesswork, judgments, assumptions about families, and allows teachers to connect families on a grade by grade basis. And this is how a school level demographic profile would be. And that's a classroom and a school level demographic profile. The third way of getting to know families is looking at the scope and sequence of parent involvement. Capitalize on the curriculum as a means of communicating with parents. It is an ongoing way to keep parents informed of their child's day, the school's goals and objectives. It is one way to begin to establish close, meaningful communication with busy parents. I created what I call parent-informed literacy groups around each grade level, where a parent would have an understanding of what does it mean to be a kindergarten parent, what does it mean to be a third or fourth or fifth grade parent, and it was all built around the curriculum. At the kindergarten level, we focused on sharing time, first grade emergent literacy, second grade reading and writing connections, third grade writing process, fourth and fifth grade content area reading. The last new way is scenarios for problem solving with parents. I like this quote: start where you are, but don't stay there. We used in this book that I'm going to share with you in the next few minutes the whole theory of cognitive flexibility. Cognitive flexibility accounts for real-world complexity and nuanced case aspects. Teach to analyze for similarities and irregularities. Instills an epistemic mindset or worldview. And one of my colleagues here at Michigan State created that theory. I want to tell you quickly about how this book came together. I was talking to my graduate students and asked them when they were teaching, what were some things that they worried about around family engagement? And they came up with a set of cases that I want to share with you that I think would be a different approach, because sometimes we lump all parents in the same group, and parents are very different. And you can see they came from various parts of the country. And the title of that book is Partnering with Families for Student Success, 24 Scenarios for Problem Solving with Parents. We came up with, like I said, 24 modules like caregivers who do not respond, caregivers with low print literacy. And so as you can see, we have a variety of modules, and I will give you a quick look at how those modules are set up. Perceived inequalities. This applies to the student, the caregivers, and the teacher. That's power, prestige, positioning, and access. And Maslow's hierarchy. What we were trying to do here is we had samples of cases, and we would let the teacher read the case, and then we would go through a whole process. Like, for example, so what I'm trying to say here is that what are the individual needs as described in the scenario, and where do these needs fit on Maslow's hierarchy of needs? And that's for the student, the student's caregiver, and the teacher. And once they analyze this, then they start to make some decisions as to how they're going to move forward with this particular family based on this family situation. So you're identifying meaningful solutions, underlying needs, power, prestige, and positioning. You're looking at all of that as you began to make decisions about how best to work with this family and this child. You want to collaborate together and figure out the best solutions. I like this quote by Henry Ford. He says, coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success. America's future walks through the doors of our schools every day. This is my contact information. Thank you very much, and I look forward to interacting with you regarding any questions you might have.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you so much. We would like to begin our Q&A session by asking Dr. Edwards some questions about her presentation. The first question I have is, Dr. Edwards, for districts who have limited resources and might be looking to build a parent engagement initiative, what would you suggest as a great starting point?
One of the first things that I would do, well, for one thing, many of the things that I did not call for money. Because for example, when I worked at this professional development school, I told them, I said, instead of us having open house, why don't we get the community like McDonald's, Burger King, Denny's to offer coffee, a bagel, and let us all meet in groups of 5 and talk about the program. So that didn't really cost any money. And what I basically was trying to do is that the community always talk about schools. And so what I wanted to do is involve them in meaningful ways, and we didn't have to pay for it, for them to finance those donuts and coffee or orange juice. And so what we were trying to do is build a relationship with parents and not letting them think that they're sending their children to school and that's all they have to do. We really wanted to develop a partnership because if you think about it, most schools have 3 touch points. There's the fall and spring conference and open house. And I convinced the teachers that open house is a party and parents are not clear what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to do it. And I said to them, if your child is in a sport, in August where you can work out driving schedules, the dates and the times, but that doesn't happen when it comes to family engagement. Is that if a parent has more than one child and you're giving them all this homework and everything, that's confusing. And a lot of times parents don't understand what it is you're asking them to do. So we created these spaces. And one thing that I also did was to find out where all the parents worked. And I asked their employers to let them off one day a month because this was my first time living in a collective bargaining state. And I knew that parents didn't want to come at night and teachers didn't either. So we had it during the day. And that's how I worked. I've tried to work out all of the issues that might be an issue.
Really just thinking outside of the box. Very, really helpful. Do you have any suggestions for schools or districts building parent teams? Who should be on those parent teams and what are some suggestions for building that team effectively?
For one thing, you need parents on the team and you need to get those parents that don't normally come to school. I mean, we always have the PTA mamas or daddies, but sometimes those hard to reach parents, they are not there. So when I did some work in Louisiana, I met with the Ministerial Alliance to talk with them about getting the messages about what I was trying to do as a part of their church services. I went to all the beauty shops, the barber shops, the bars. In other words, I wanted the community to value literacy at the same level they valued athletics. And so I wanted to put the message out there. So they were at the grocery stores, where they were at laundromats. I was trying to incorporate the entire community because a person that might not be powerful in the mainstream community can be very powerful in their own sub communities. So what I was trying to do is give everybody a voice.
And I love that quote of valuing literacy the same level that we value athletics. That's huge. Thank you. Great statement. Is there a resource to point to that kind of just has a bank of best practices that people could pull from? I know you hit on so many, and this was really, really helpful. But is there a like a site or a resource that could be accessed either online or someplace for schools to just go to when they need just some ideas?
Well, I know the book that I wrote, New Ways to Engage Parents, Strategies and Tools for Teachers and Leaders K-12. That's a book that I wrote, and that's a book that received a lot of accolades from teachers. And I have a study guide that I have as a handout that they can use, and that takes you through the whole process of what you should be doing. One of the things that I've discovered is that family engagement means different things to different people. And I didn't want it around, food and stuff like that. I wanted it around the curriculum because when everything is said and done at the end of the year, since school is a public place, I wanted the kids to be doing better. And I didn't want it totally on the teachers. And so in that book, New Ways to Engage Parents, I talk about technological ways because, this is not like back in the 1950s, 90% of the parents were stay-home parents and moms. And that's what I discovered at this particular school. And the teachers were thinking about a time that did not exist. And that's why I said we need to do a demographic, because you don't want to have 600 donuts and 13 parents and everybody is all upset. It's like there's a new community around the school. And I find that teachers sometimes are structuring their teaching around a population of kids and families that don't exist in that school. So that's why I start at the background. It's not about if you have like spaghetti dinners or pancakes for breakfast or donuts for that, everybody's there. So our carnivals, but what do you have around the curriculum? And that's why I created these parent informant literacy groups and had teachers to let parents understand the state standards. So no matter what state you live in, there are standards, and making sure that at each grade level, parents understand what it means to be that kindergarten parent. And while you saw me do sharing time, by the way, with the sharing time, these two kindergarten teachers, their combined experience was 50 years. And they were just getting at the end of their nerves because the parents weren't taking it seriously. So what we did, we came up with 32 topics. We gave every parent the topic and the day that their child would be presenting. And we sent home tape recorders where we could actually hear what the conversations were. And then we videotaped the presentation at school. And we got permission from the other parents, because for one parent, this might be their first kindergartner. For another parent, this might be their third kindergartner. And we created this group where examples, because we wanted all the kids to be topic centered. So we didn't wish for it, we planned for it. And so at the end of the year, we got what we set out to get. All the kids were topic centered because we could talk to the parents very specifically about the sample that they had done. And so that was very helpful. And then, like I said, looking at emergent literacy, we bought every parent a copy of What Did I Read? What Did I Write? And my whole point is, when it comes to money, I think teachers can ask for things, and it's going to be surprising how you can get things. We have, Walmart and all kinds of businesses, Pizza Hut, that are willing to contribute if you write a good proposal and say, this is what I need you to do to help our children. Because the school is a microcosm of society. So whatever issues or concerns in that community, I feel like those things can be addressed.
Great, thank you. Is there anything else you would like to add for the audience? It was a great presentation.
Well, I know one of the issues that a lot of schools have struggled with are children moving throughout the year. And I think that it's important for us to keep children in the same school, because if children start the school in August and then they leave in November and they come back in April, just in time for testing. So you might be testing X number of students, but it might not be the same sort of students. So one of the things that I did was to meet with the school board and said, look, we need to, these teachers cannot be getting a different group of students in the school every 3 months. That's impossible. And I sort of made them laugh. I said, can you imagine you go in surgery and you think you're going to do something to this particular patient, and as soon as you turn your back, there's another patient on the table. You don't know what to do. And I said, so teachers are continuously starting over. So that was one of the issues that I focused on. And what I would say is that you have to ask for what you want and not assume that things are going to happen. You have to plan. And I think parent involvement has been high rhetoric and low practice. And you just can't wish for it. Schools cannot and would not exist without children. And sometimes people make assumptions that everything happens in 6.5 hours, but there are 17.5 hours where kids are somewhere else. And what I would advocate is for schools and teachers and administrators to help plan for that 17.5 hours. Because I always used the metaphor that when I was growing up, I liked to be on the seesaw. Well, I would have to recruit someone to play with me on the seesaw, because if I'm on the seesaw and there's no balance there, I can't play. And I'm going to say that's the same way with teachers. Teachers go into teaching because they want to teach, but they need a partner. And there's no way, and parents teach on a one-on-one basis. Teachers are teaching 1 to 25, and in some spaces it might be more than that. And so I'm saying that teachers need some support, but you have to create the opportunity to get that support. You just can't assume that it's going to happen.
Excellent. Thank you. So, Dr. Edwards, thank you for your amazing presentation and for your wise words sharing with the team, with the group. And thank you to the audience for being part of this session and attending. We encourage you to enjoy the rest of your conference. Be sure to join us for the closing session at the end. Thank you again.